Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Sunday Night Live, your favorite automotive show where we talk about the issues that help you to improve the customer experience at your store. But it's not always automotive. Sometimes I run across someone that just makes an impression on me, and it's something that will benefit not only those in automotive, but also just anybody in life in any profession, because I have found that miscommunication or communication is the root of all evil. Mm-hmm. People speak, but they're not necessarily listening to what the other person's saying. We've all heard the, speak to listen, or speak to respond, or speak to understand. And most people speak to respond. And when I saw some of Daniel Pennington's content online, it's like, wow, this guy's got it. Not only does he get the words across, but he says them in such a way that it's like perfectly choreographed. He keeps your attention and you want to listen for that next word. And he's able to effectively communicate everything that he's trying to get across. And very few people that I meet have that ability. So Daniel, welcome to the show, my friend.
I'm very glad to be here, Paul. I'm excited to be here. This is a really big topic, and I don't know that we could oversell it. The reality is that communication is the currency of this generation. There was a time in maybe our dad's time or our grandpa's time where you would go to work and you would stand by yourself or sit by yourself and rarely talk to anybody. But today we can't get anything done without working through and with and in conjunction with other people. I do a lot of healthcare, and the people in healthcare tell me that just to order tongue depressors, they have to have 3 people in 2 different departments just to make that one thing happen. So you can imagine doing something really complicated like a surgery or building a new wing on the hospital, how many people that involves. And the fact of the matter is that, just as you said, Paul, so many times the communication is just so incomplete, inaccurate, and it costs companies money. The statistic is that a small to medium-sized company loses about $500,000 a year because of incomplete, poor, and shoddy communications. So we're making a lot of mistakes here.
Unbelievable how much money is tied to that.
Well, it's really not surprising. I mean, to do everything, think about everything that you do, Paul, or what the dealers do. Everybody's talking to everybody all the time. Plus, we have this complication of now we're getting text messages and we're getting emails. And I have like 4 different email addresses. And then LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I'm glad you guys are here on LinkedIn. But you get LinkedIn messages and then phone calls. And it's just so much. But it's so often it's hard to navigate all of that, all of those different types of communication.
Now, before we get too far into this, I want to acknowledge a couple of comments. My buddy Mike Vogel. Good evening, Paul Foodie Meijer from snowy Southern California. And we have Stephen Ryder. It's a different world RN team. Tell us a little bit about your background, just so the audience knows, and then we'll jump into it.
Okay, sure. My background is I did 32 years in television. During all of that time, what I did mainly was I made commercials and made some long form programs, but a lot of commercials. And matter of fact, I estimate that I've done about 10,000 commercials in my time.
Wow.
That sounds exciting, but it's about 60 a month for the 15 years or so that I was doing it. And I wrote most of these and I helped to put them together, and I worked with the clients. And so I've spent a lot of time actually in dealerships, because that the car dealerships are our largest client, and most small town TV stations, the car dealerships spend more than anybody else. So but I was different when I was working there, because most people will just come in and they point a camera at you and they say, "Okay, Paul, go." Well, you don't know what to say. You don't know how to say it. You don't know what to do with your hands. You don't know where to stand. You don't know anything. But I always came in, I have a degree actually in filmmaking, and I came in as a director and a producer. And I come in and I think, well, how can we make Paul look as good as we can, saying the right things at the right time, and what he can do with his body at the same time. So 32 years of doing that. I loved it. It was intense. I used to say it was like running through an art museum. There's some really gorgeous stuff there, but it's hard to appreciate it because you're moving so fast. And then I worked for, I changed and I worked for a healthcare company called the Studer Group. And what was interesting about the Studer Group is that they had maybe 10 of the best speakers in the country. I mean, literally, they built their business on these incredible speakers. They would get up at conventions and they would give phenomenal presentations. And I got a chance to work with them. I got the chance to videotape them, and I could play them back and forwards and say, what is this guy doing? How does this work? And then 10 years ago, I quit that because the company was sold, and I went out on my own. And my old boss called me and said, hey, you want to teach people to speak? And I did that. Now I've done that for 10 years.
Wow. That's an interesting background you have there.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, isn't it?
Definitely more I want to know offline here, because some of the stuff that you talk about is some of the stuff that I do in what I do, in
Really?
video productions and kind of coaching people on what to say and how to say it to deliver a particular message. So that's very cool. So getting back to the communication piece of it. All right.
Yes.
I've taken a Dale Carnegie professional development and speaking course, and it taught me a few things. That was kind of this self-discovery. Okay. And what I learned personally is that in our regular communication, quite often we don't understand what the other person is trying to convey to us. Yet we just plow right through. And I'll give you an example. After the course, my wife had said something to me, and I completely misunderstood what she said. The old me might have fired back something that was quasi inappropriate, but I took the time to clarify. And I said, all right, so what I heard you say was this, this, and this. Did I understand you correctly? And she was happy that I asked for clarification, because it wasn't at all what she was trying to communicate. And we had a much better conversation from it when we both understood, what the other heard and what the other was expecting. So what you do fascinates me because you get to work with a lot of people that don't understand what to say or how to say it.
If you look at my basic client, Paul, what happens is people move through their career, and mainly because of technical skills. You can imagine like an accountant. An accountant's the very best accountant in this firm, and he moves up and up and up and up. And then all of a sudden what happens? Somebody makes him the next level, and he's got to do business development, which is another word for sales, or to give him a team of people. And anybody that's in management at any kind, that 80% of your 80% of your job is just communicating. You cannot over communicate with your team. And so those two things require something different. So they will often get that job, and then they'll call me and they'll say, I have no idea how to do this. And then we'll work through that process. It works actually pretty fast. I work with one-on-one clients. I've got maybe a dozen of them right now. I've got small groups that I work with. Maybe you bring your entire team in and we train. I'm doing that a couple times this March. And then I'll speak to like a large group, 200 people, 400 people in a room. And I do all of those. But the sweet spot really is the one-on-one training, because people just know I'm not going to be effective at this next job unless I figure out how to communicate better.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to get to a couple of comments. My friend Peter Smith. Good evening, Paul. Good evening, Peter. It was great to see you in Dallas, man. And Stephen Ryder said, we have 90 employees, 80 remote. I love them all, but right now communication is a lot different. He says, I did Carnegie when I was in my 20s. What an opportunity. That is something that I suggest everybody do,
Mm-hmm.
because it just teaches you so much, not just about communication, but about dealing with people and about yourself. It was really, really fascinating. And Mike Vogel says communication should probably go back to basics. Daniel is correct. There are so many means of communication nowadays that actually make it more challenging. And Stephen Ryder agrees. He said, Mike Vogel, absolutely. We're constantly bombarded with all types of communication, whether it be text, whether it be Messenger, whether it be LinkedIn Messenger, whether it be email. There's so much. And in automotive, and probably not unlike most businesses, jargon.
Jargon's a big deal. Yeah, it's a mess. Just talking about Steven's situation where he has 90 employees and 80 of them are remote or whatever those numbers are. I have to put on my glasses to read the comment, and I don't want to. But anyway, what happens there is, you start with a little baby business, and then it grows. So there's a company here in town that does they do medical devices, and when they were a baby business, I worked with them, and then just recently I worked with the full grown version, and they sat around and they said, Daniel, this is just tough. Why was it so easy back then? And I said, well, you had like 5 people in a room, and they actually were so close that you could touch their knees. That's easy communication. Now you've got people in 3 different countries, in 80 different places in the United States. Everybody's on Zoom or Teams or on the phone or text messaging all of the time. Half your people are in airplanes somewhere. It's just, what got us here. I keep saying this as a statement. What got us here is not going to get us there. I told them what got you here was being pretty good at communicating. To get to that next level where you get to be a $20 million, $40 million, $100 million company, you're going to have to be experts at this, not just good at it, but experts. And that means everybody, from the top down, from the bottom up, everybody has to be expert communicators in order to get to that next level, because you just can't get by with it without it. Now, you mentioned jargon. Well, that's a huge thing. Same company, same class. They have medical devices. They put these medical devices in doctors' offices, and the person who runs it is usually like a medical assistant. Very low level. I mean, they're good. Please, if you're a medical assistant watching this, don't beat me up for this, but they don't have a lot of training. And so they then have to run this device. Well, somebody gets on the phone with them and walks them through it, but it's a technical person, and they load them up with too much jargon, too many acronyms. Acronyms are a disaster, and that person gets overwhelmed. And so I said it to this company, and they sort of got it. As I said, I drove over here today in a very nice 2013 Dodge Caravan. And it's true. I mean, a lot of people brag about driving a Caravan, but I actually do. And I was, and yet it's got anti-lock brakes, overhead cam, front locking differentials, and it's got all these things. You know what? I don't know what any of them do. And furthermore, I don't need to know what any of them do in order to communicate. And I just drive the car, right?
Dan, let me just stop you for a second.
Yes, sir.
I don't know anybody that brags about driving a Caravan.
Come on, man. This is the coolest car in the world. And it's not only that, it's a 2013. It's got a dent in every panel. That's the way I roll, But listen, it's the reality is that we give people too much information. We don't, my mechanic knows all of those things, but I don't need to.
Right.
So we have to winnow that down to how much do they actually need to know, and then be very clear about that. And then we have to ask for feedback. So, Paul, I explained this to you, how this works. Do you got it? Do you understand it? Are you with me? Is there here's the presumptive question is, we taught doctors this. So doctors have a really bad habit of they're going to perform heart surgery, or you're going to have brain surgery, or whatever it may be. And they'll say, as they're walking out the door, they'll have their phone in their hand, and they're walking out the door, and they'll turn and look at you and go, got any questions? And the presumption is, of course, You don't have any questions because I wouldn't be walking out of the door. But it's serious stuff. And of course they have questions. So we taught them to say this the other way, which is, we know this is complicated and it's probably a little frightening. It would be natural for you now to have questions. And then they go, oh, yeah, I actually do have questions. The presumption is that you'll always have questions. But yeah, all the jargon, almost every one of my clients, I have to talk about the jargon. You know, everybody has their internal way of communicating. I was just working with a insurance company. And I mean, I'd raise my hand every time they'd say something. I'd raise my hand, and you have to understand this, Daniel. These are ordinary words. No, I don't. You know, I don't get up in the morning and say to my wife, you know what we should do? We should look into an insurance product. That's not a way we talk. You know,
Right.
We used to make commercials for a dealership here in town, and they wanted to do an inventory reduction sale every month. Inventory reduction sale. Now, I don't know if this is the way other people talk, but you just don't get up on Saturday and go, you know what? I need to go down to Ted Ciano and help him reduce his inventory. Because one, we don't call cars inventory. Maybe you do. Maybe at NADA they do, but we don't. The people who are buying it, I would never call it. That doesn't even make sense to me to call it inventory. And why I would care that Ted Ciano needs to reduce his inventory is beyond me. How is that a hook for me?
Right.
Now I worked with another company here in town, and his name is Alan Turner. He's a great guy. And we wrote him a line called "It's Alan Turner Time." And we would set it up with a commercial that would say, this happened. And like, for instance, my daughter was going to go to the local college. Now she's going to go to Florida State, which is 4.5 hours away. It's Alan Turner time. We need a better car. And that made sense because it was talking to the customer in terms that they know and
Right.
about problems that they have.
Yeah, no, 100%. I want to get to a couple of comments.
Yes, sir.
Stephen Ryder says the younger generation is much sharper in many ways. You know, it's just different. I wouldn't necessarily say sharper, but definitely different. They're just used to communicating differently, and
they do. I mean, I have to call my daughter and tell her I've written her an email. So I will text her and say, there's an email. And she, okay, that's bizarre. Yeah. But I do agree with his sentiment. My daughter is 32, and she and all of her friends are some of the smartest people I've ever met. They literally grew up in a digital world, and they've never had a phone on the wall. They've never had, so their world is totally different, and they're very comfortable with all of that. It's for us old guys, and I don't want to include you, Paul, because you're probably 40, but
I'm a little older than you.
So for us older people, we had to learn all of these things, and we didn't just wake up with them already in there. Now, the challenge that we have is this, okay, with young people. I got you. I'm with you. No, I'm listening. I'm listening. They're looking at their phone and they're talking to you. And
they're not listening.
Well, she will tell you, I can multi-process. I can do both. No, you can't.
Multi-sequencing.
Right. And I tell you what, one of the biggest problems we have is these watches that I don't have one. Apple Watch. Oh, talk about destroying our ability to communicate. I had a good friend. She's changing jobs, and I took her to lunch to talk about that. The whole time she's like, no, I'm listening. I'm with you. And her phone's like buzzing and buzzing and buzzing. It destroys our ability to communicate. Maybe that.
Comments. We got Freddie says, not only are we using all types of communication, but also maintaining contact via our clients' preferences. It's a lot sometimes. There's a lot of noise.
There is. And I'm with you on this. I'm telling you, because some of my clients, the only thing I'm going to get is a Facebook message. Facebook message to me seems so not professional, but that's the way they want to communicate. And like Freddie says, if they're a customer of mine, I'm going to communicate with them the way they want to be communicated. I would love for everybody to migrate over to email, because in email you can write long paragraphs of stuff and clarify and get signatures and stuff. But Yeah, the so many different types of communication right now. It's very confusing.
And the lost art of actually picking up the phone. I was telling you just before we went on here,
Yeah.
I get a lot of people that reach out on LinkedIn,
Hmm.
and this particular person seemed interesting. So I said, I've got a few minutes. I'll make a few minutes for you now if you want to pick up the phone and call me. Here's my phone number. And the response blew me away. The response was, can I send you a pre-recorded message now? Like, no, you don't understand. I just gave you permission to call me now.
Hmm.
If you want to call me, I'll take your call. But if you need to send me a pre-recorded message, then I'm good. I don't need to listen to a commercial. I'd rather have a conversation. So that's something that's lost. And I just want to get to a couple more comments here. Joshua Taylor, love this guy. Says communicate, communication, conversation.
Yeah.
Russell B. Hill, good evening, all. Glad to be here. And Peter Smith says, understand your audience and communicate to them in the terms, into their terms and understanding. Typing with my thumb. Sorry for the errors. Yeah, no, to your point.
This is a good example. Now, back when I made commercials, I had a team of people and I wanted to teach them. And we had, at that time, I cannot find this video, but back then we had a video that had a car salesman and a female buyer standing there. It was probably made up. It was probably not actual. But the car salesman says his pitch. This has got an overhead cam and analog brakes and this and this and this and this. And she then looks at him and says, "Well, I've got two kids. One of them's in soccer and the other one does band. And that usually means I have like 4 kids in the car. And then I've got 2 dogs and the dogs are old. And, we drive an SUV and you try to lift these dogs up and I can't lift them anymore. And the salesman looks at her and goes, do you want the overhead cam or not?" They're like talking 2 different languages. And she's actually told him, this is the way I want to be sold.
Yes.
And he's stuck in the way that he's used to selling. And I know it's bad to point out car salesmen, but everybody does this.
But it's anybody. It's really any profession.
And because when you're in the company, man, all you can think about is your company. Whew. I saw a pitch last week from a billboard company, and all he talked about was how great his billboards were, how great they were, and where they were, and it's exciting and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm bored to death. What problem are you solving for the customer? All right. Are you solving a problem? Talk about that customer, what their needs are, and how you solved it. So I built a new restaurant and it's right off the highway, but it is down 2 blocks and then 1 to the right. So I can put that on a billboard and it could say Daniel Pennington's barbecue down to and on the right. And good, my business would explode. But if you just talk about yourself, I mean, I didn't get that from the conversation.
Now that brings me to the next point.
Yes, sir.
What you refer to as me marketing.
Me marketing. This is probably the biggest. Almost like a virus that has gone on, where everybody just talks about themselves, right? I've got a friend that owns a real estate company. He hired a new lady, and he asked this lady to write down some things about how she does business or whatever, so he could put it into a page in the newspaper. Yes, there are still newspapers here, and he sent it to me, and he said, "What do you think?" And I circled 62 times in this quarter-page ad. She said, "Me, my," or "what I like to do," or "me." It was all about her. It was just horrible. And who cares? Who cares how you like to do business? I mean, that's me marketing at their worst. And he asked me, he said, "Well, what would you do differently?" Well, somewhere in that word salad, we found the idea that she works with military. We're a big military town here. She works with military. I said, okay, well, let's talk about that. Military people, military spouses have totally different needs than the rest of us. Let's talk about what they need, what their problems are, and how you solve them. And we rewrote that in terms of what that military person would experience, not being able to see the house before they buy it, wanting something that's going to be in the right school district so other military kids are in that, blah, blah, blah. and it was a great ad. And then she targeted into military publications, and I think she's doing all right with it. But me marketing is when you just talk about me and also me. Oh, and oh, did I say also about me? And real marketing is looking at the customer and their problems and challenges and highlighting, saying, these are the challenges people are going through, and here's how we solve them. And we'd love to solve things for you.
People care about what's in it for them.
Exactly.
There's
Number
100%
one thing.
correct.
That what WIIFM.
Yeah.
If you can't answer that like right off the bat, then no one's going to listen.
I want to play a short video of yours. One of the videos I saw that caught my attention. So let me bring it up on the screen. I just love the way you did this video. Let me just hit play.
Hi, my name is Daniel Pennington.
Well, it was on my end, at least, it was a little muted. Did you guys hear it correctly? Anybody wants to chime in?
I hope it went across.
Well, anyway, I looked fantastic. So that's what all that matters, is that the hair and everything was pretty good. So
And of course, any hair is good hair.
I wasn't going to say anything. I really wasn't. Now, you talked about getting on the phone. So a couple of weeks ago, I'm just sitting here in my office. This is my home office, and I get this phone call from this guy, and he's just so enthusiastic about me and my stuff. And I was excited with him, and the two of us just got into this little conversation. And he said, "Hey, I want you to be a part of this show." I'm like, "Yeah, whatever you're doing, man, I want to be a part of it." That's also a technique, which is here, I'm going to give you a great secret. If you're not excited about your product, there's no way I'm going to be excited about it. If you're not excited about your product, there's no way that anybody else will be. Can you imagine going to see your favorite band? You finally get tickets to this, and you go somewhere and drive, and you stay overnight, and then you go out there and you're standing at the base of the stage, and they come out and they're all bored to death. Whatever, oh, it would be the worst thing ever. Of course, they don't do that. What they do up there is they give you all of their energy. They're excited about it. They're having fun, or appear to be having fun, and you get that energy from them. We need that from people that are trying to persuade us. I hopefully give you the idea that I'm excited about this topic. I'm excited to be here, and I hope you hear it, because so often, especially people who've been in the business a long time, will go out and be kind of dead, kind of dull, just kind of dead. You know what I mean? Because it's not fun anymore. So now they're just going through so I need to hear the enthusiasm in your voice. You don't necessarily need to smile, but I need to hear it. You can hear somebody that's excited because it's the sound of their voice. Hey, Paul, it's really good to be here with you. I can't believe that in this short period of time, you and I have become such great friends. You can hear that in my voice, right? And so often people are like Ferris Bueller's teacher, and it's all real flat.
And all these things will benefit everybody that puts it to use. I want to get to a couple of comments. Elizabeth Harford, good point on the car sales talking to a different language. Very good point on the car example with the car salesman and the buyer, what she wants to hear, and he has no clue. I mean, you
Right.
hear that time and time again.
Right. The first and foremost thing I would tell you is that as much as I teach speaking, and that's my entire career is to teach speaking, we've got to be better listeners than we are. People are really terrible listeners. I produced for a short period of time, I produced a TV show, and we had a non-professional host, very nice young lady, but she would come in on the day, and she'd have her 20 questions, sit down with somebody and ask those 20 questions in order. And you could tell sometimes that the person who's answered said something that was alarming, because we had an audience and the audience would gasp, oh my. And she wouldn't even mention it. She'd just go, okay, next question is this. And she'd go right on. She wasn't paying attention. She was just reeling off her things. So yeah, we got to be better listeners, because, and this is really fun thing about sales, is they will tell you, and they tell me all the time, I'm in sales as well, because I'm trying to get new clients all the time. I'm trying to get new people on board. And if I will talk for a few minutes and then shut up, that other person will tell me how they want to be sold if I listen. Right.
Now, communication, there's verbal communication, there's body language,
right,
and there's non-communication communications. Silence.
Silence. Yeah, just silence. Is said. When I worked in TV, as I said, for 32 years, we had a reporter that went out to interview this lady that ran a circus that was just elephants. It was a little tiny circus, maybe 6 or 8 elephants, and that had some problems with the elephants being abused and being badly hurt. And the reporter asked her a question about it. The woman had a planned answer. And then the reporter said, but this isn't the first time that one of your elephants have been badly hurt. Smart thing she did then was she sat silent for the longest time. I saw it on tape, and it was probably 4 minutes of silence. So this isn't the first time that your elephants have been hurt. People cannot stand that silence. And so after a period of time, she started talking about it. And then she started talking. And before long, she has divulged all of the accidents that these elephants have had and all the times that there's been something awful. It was the best interview ever. Why? Because she shut up. And most of us, here I am talking the whole time, but most of us could stand to sit quiet for a while.
I wanted you to talk all the time.
It
brings a lot of value to the conversation.
Can I tell you something off? You talked about your wife earlier. A friend of mine is a relationship coach, and he said, do you want to be married forever? I said, well, I don't know. Forever's a long time. He goes, no, I'm kidding. You want to be married forever, do this. And he said, when you get up in the morning, sit down with your wife, 15 to 18 minutes, have a cup of coffee, and just ask her questions. Just what's going on with you today? I've done this now for 3 years. Best part of her day, because I will just say, what's happening with you? I don't try to solve problems, because guys are terrible about trying to solve the problems. I don't give her suggestions. I don't talk about me. It's so hard if she says, well, I had a bad day yesterday because the computer was messed up. Well, I had a bad day yesterday. My computer didn't work. No, if you just make it about her, 16 to 18 minutes. And you know how when you fill the gas up and you have the little thing and it clicks on there and you can walk away from it. And when it's full, it kind of pops that. That's what happens with her. I mean, I can see it. We don't get to 18 minutes most days, because at about 12 minutes, she's done. She's gotten everything she needed. What does she need more than anything in the world? She needs to know that I care. And giving her undivided attention and asking about her demonstrates to her that day that I care that day. It's genius.
Now, in our business communications,
yes, sir.
Right? It's to quote Grant Cardone, sell or be sold. We ask questions oftentimes and we get that one answer and that's it. But you talk about ask questions like a 3-year-old.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
So asking questions, I'm sorry, Paul, asking questions like a 3-year-old, and I've got a 2-year-old grandbaby, and what she does, and we went to the museum recently, and she asked about why there aren't any more dinosaurs. And her parents were great and explained it in detail. And then about 8 minutes later, she asked why there aren't any dinosaurs. And they explained it again and again and again. See, that's the thing, is that sometimes she needs to hear that all the way through. And there's probably something that's missing. A lot of times what happens is you think you know the answer and you don't know the answer. I'll give you an example. We had some people here at one of our local, we were doing a real estate convention that was training them to be better salespeople. And these two got up and they said, we've been trying to sell this couple a house for like a year and we have not been able to do it. Okay, well, tell us what's going on. Well, it's a nice couple. They want to move from one house to another in the same school district because they have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. And we keep finding houses for them, but they say, no, it has to have a pool. And we're just stuck with limited inventory and stuff like that. And the sales manager was smart enough to say, now, wait a minute. Do they have a pool where they are? No. Okay, but they have to have a pool. They're not picky about anything, but they have to have a pool. Yeah? Well, it must mean something. Go ask them what that means. And they did. They went and asked, and the couple said back and forth. And finally, the man said, here's the deal. We have a 12-year-old girl and a 15-year-old boy. And during the summer, when everybody's at work, they go down the street to a neighbor who has a pool. And other kids are there. We don't know that anything bad's happening, but we don't know what is happening. And we worry so much that, I don't know, drugs or drinking or, premarital sex or whatever. We don't know. If we have a pool, then they will come to our house and we can better regulate that. So the answer by asking a question behind the question is that what happened was it was really a good reason why they needed a pool, because they love their kids and they want their kids to be healthy, but they didn't get that. We need a pool. And if you say we need a pool, then you're like, okay, we'll look for a pool. That's not what they're looking for. They're looking for the safety of their kids.
Right. The answer behind the question.
Yeah. So sometimes you have to rephrase it and say it again and again and again until finally you get to the thing that really matters. Most of our decisions are based on emotion. Everybody will tell you, no, I'm very logical. No. If you look at it, everybody's making an emotional decision. If I asked you, Paul, how you came about marrying your wife, you would give us some details, whatever. But you know what? In the end, it just feels right. And that's an emotional decision. I bought a house on the beach. We live on a beautiful beach. I bought a house on the beach and I looked at 20 of them. My real estate guy was so frustrated with me. And then he was ready to kick me to the curb. And then the last place I went in and I sat down and I said, this is it. He said, you haven't seen the place yet. I said, no, this is it. It felt right. That's right. The way we make decisions. We make decisions that are not logical, that are emotion based. And then we tell people later. I bought a Mazda Miata. Now, nobody buys a Mazda Miata because they're logical, because it's an illogical car no matter what you do. Because it literally, you stand in the grocery store, and if you get the 12-pack of toilet paper, you can't get it home because there's no place to put it. It's a totally illogical thing. But I was looking at it, and my friend, who is the salesperson, said, hey, you know how good you'd look with that redhead in the seat next to you, blasting down that beach highway, playing your music as loud as you can? You'd look great in that. And I bought it. We make decisions based on emotional reasons. And if we can find the emotion behind that, like they did with the people with the swimming pool, then you got them. But that's also the resistance. When you're hearing resistance, why are you hearing resistance? Because you haven't really gotten to the question behind the question behind the question. Does that make sense?
Absolutely makes sense. Well, listen, Daniel, I want to thank you very much for being my guest this evening. I hope there are some things that resonated with some folks. Mm-hmm. If I'm not connected with you, please reach out and connect. If you're not connected with Daniel, please reach out and connect. I've tagged him in this post. Invariably, if you're like me and most people, you remember what you forgot to ask when you had the opportunity to do so. The beauty of the internet is that you're just one mouse click away from reaching out directly to ask that question that you may have forgotten to ask. One of two things comes from asking a question and reaching out. You're either going to A, get validation that you're doing everything correctly and that you're on the right track, or B, there may be a better way to do something that you're struggling with now. And the only way you're going to know that is to pick up the phone and call. So by all means, reach out to either one of us. Please connect to either one of us. And I appreciate everybody that supports the show, whether you watch it live or on the replay. Daniel, stay on here while we log off. Want to wish you a safe and successful next week, and we'll see you next week on Sunday Night Live. Thanks again.